Welcome to Beyond the Needle, the Aesthetics Business Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Ruse. I'm a former clinic manager turned digital marketing freelancer, and I've had the privilege of helping dozens of aesthetic practitioners across the UK and beyond grow their business. So I know firsthand just how challenging it can be to build a successful aesthetics practice in today's competitive market. Each week, I'm here to share real, actionable strategies and bring on expert guests to help you level up, attract more patients, and build a standout brand. Let's turn your passion into a thriving business together. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Needle. In today's episode, I am delighted to welcome Dr. Alison Colville, an aesthetics practitioner with a truly unique and deeply personal journey. After spending years in general practice and surgery, Alison found herself drawn to aesthetics, but her path wasn't a conventional one. While training in aesthetics alongside her NHS work, she began studying functional medicine, homeopathy, acupuncture, and hormonal health, which led to an internal conflict. How could she reconcile aesthetics with a more natural, whole-body approach to medicine? It wasn't until she went through multiple rounds of IVF that her perspective completely shifted. IVF took an enormous toll on Alison, both physically and emotionally. She found herself moving away from aesthetics, feeling a sense of disconnect between the treatment she was providing and the deep spiritual and health-focused journey that she was on. When her IVF journey came to an end, she began to rebuild her confidence and rediscover herself, and surprisingly, aesthetics played a huge role in that. After years of feeling depleted, Alison had aesthetic treatments for the first time in a long time, and something suddenly clicked. It wasn't about looking refreshed, it was about feeling like herself again. That moment sparked a personal transformation. She committed to getting healthy, exercising, and taking back control of her life, and for the first time, she truly understood the power of aesthetics beyond just the physical changes. This realisation led her to fully embrace aesthetics again, but this time on her own terms. She opened the Avery Clinic in Warwickshire, building it from the ground up with no external investment, handling everything from branding to social media, all while committing to hour-long consultations with every new patient to ensure a deep, personalised approach. She now specialises in hormonal health, regenerative aesthetics, and combination treatments designed to help women feel empowered, not judged about wanting to look and feel their best. In this episode, we'll explore a huge range of topics from Alison's journey from aesthetics to functional medicine and back again, her deeply personal IVF experience and how it led her to step away from aesthetics before ultimately rediscovering her passion for it, why she believes women shouldn't feel judged for wanting to invest in themselves and feel their best, the stigma around aesthetic treatments, particularly dermal fillers, and why she's a huge advocate for them, how hormonal changes, menopause, and aesthetics all fit together to support confidence at every stage of life, the growing demand for regenerative aesthetics and why treatments like Profilo, polynucleotides, and exosomes are becoming increasingly popular, how she built her clinic from the ground up and what's worked for her in terms of building her brand awareness and putting herself out there, and finally, the importance of education and patient consultations and how she helps women make informed, confident choices. This was such a refreshingly honest conversation about aesthetics, aging, business growth, and empowerment, and I'm confident that all aesthetic practitioners at any stage of their business growth will be able to take something amazing away from this conversation. So let's dive in. Welcome, Alison, and thank you so much for joining me this morning. So you have had such an incredible journey. You started off working in general practice, you've worked in Australia, and now you're pretty much fully dedicating yourself to aesthetics whilst maintaining your licence as a GP. Can you take us back to where it all began? What made you take the leap from traditional medicine to aesthetics?
Yeah, so hi Emily, thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. I'm really, really excited to be here. So it's been a bit of a journey, as I'm sure it has for all of us in the aesthetics world. So I started my GP training in 2013, and I'd previously actually been looking to train in orthopedics. I just about started my training in orthopedics to kind of realizing this is what I wanted to do long term. And absolutely loved everything to do with it. The form of the body, I really liked the anatomy side of it, the mechanics of the body. And I moved areas and the training program wasn't quite what I hoped it to be. And for various sort of lifestyle reasons and things like that, I chose, we'll go down the route of GP. It had always been something I'd enjoyed as part of, medical school and my junior doctor training. So started my career as a GP. Once I qualified, fairly quickly, I moved into doing a mixture of both NHS and private work, which was really great. It gave me a real sort of variety of different things. I was practicing travel medicine. I was doing some sexual health as well. And actually, it really sparked an interest for me in the more sort of holistic side and sort of alternative medicine as well. And of course, this isn't something you get to practice too much in the NHS. Along with that, I did my first course in Botox and fillers, as everything was just called back in the day, and really, really enjoyed it. So I was kind of practicing a mixture of different things. And from there, things kind of got a little bit more complicated. I worked at various different clinics. I was really, really enjoying the aesthetic side. But then I had this kind of what felt completely opposite at the time. Things now are very, very different, of course. Regenerative medicine and the sort of wellness industries is merging completely with aesthetics now, which, sort of 7-8 years ago, that just was not the case. It was very much sort of aesthetics felt like I felt an air of judgment and sort of it's superficial. It's just about how you look, etc. And then, for example, I was studying for a diploma in homeopathy at the time. I was looking to do my yoga teacher training. I was really, really into everything kind of wellness and natural and holistic. And then so I just kind of had this real sort of mix up in my own head, based on not necessarily my own judgments, but judgments from, I guess, how we are or were definitely as a society. I think I struggled to find, well, where is my place in all of that? And then my partner, Tom, and I both had a particularly bad day at work and came home. So he works in the automotive car industry, and both of us just sort of, let's just go to Australia. It really was as simple as that. And we made the decision to go. I mean, it did take us 9 months to get there. It wasn't like we were there next week. It's a long, long process. So I went over there on a visa as a GP, moved out to Sydney, which was pretty incredible. Lived on Bondi Beach and found an aesthetics clinic there on Bondi Beach. It was the dream. So I started practicing my GP separately and then focused more on aesthetics when I was out there. So that kind of continued my journey for a little bit. After a year or so of us being out in Australia, we decided we wanted to start to try to conceive. And I think this is where things kind of, on that personal level, really started to affect how I was looking at everything around me, how I was looking at my work and things like that. Unfortunately, we didn't just get pregnant, the same way that we're taught from a teenager, it just happens, doesn't it? Of course, it'll always just happen. 3 or 4 years down the line thinking, this isn't happening. Why is this not happening? Started having tests and things done. The tests were all coming back very normal. Everything's fine. So, of course, as a woman, the more you read into it, the more you realize, well, it must be something I'm doing. This is my fault. That's my fault. So, as I'm sure anyone who's struggled to conceive or even just trying for a baby for 2 or 3 months, you're kind of like, oh, why didn't it happen this month? Oh, maybe it's because I had that glass of wine then, or I had a bath when I was ovulating, or, it's all these things. And it's something that we as women do. We just turn it all in on ourselves. So I became stricter with what I was eating, what I was doing, and I was just, I think that for some reason drove me down this road of thinking, right, I need to kind of have effect. I need to let go of everything. And I thought, well, what am I doing trying to look a certain way? Really, I need to focus on just being a woman. And, maybe I need to just allow my body to do what it wants to do. And so I kind of villainized it in my own head. It's like I finally believed all those judgments, and I was being told it's probably because you're too stressed, and you need to stop doing this and stop doing that, which is from people you love. It's always meant in good faith, isn't it? But essentially, and of course, when we were trying to conceive and having certain treatments that we offer in aesthetics was never a good option anyway. So I started sort of pulling back from those sort of things. That then started the next couple of years 3 years really, where we ended up starting down the road of IVF. We were diagnosed essentially with an unexplained infertility. Essentially, I was told my eggs were just a bit too old, and that was at 33. So that was a wounder. Because of all that, Julie, of course, I wasn't having any treatment, and I'd actually turned myself pretty hard against aesthetics. I thought, this is not what women should be being made to do by society. I felt quite passionately the other way because I think it was my way of channeling and trying to get to where I wanted to be. This, of course, coincided with COVID and everything. We moved back from Australia when COVID hit because, fear of God was put in all of us, really, wasn't it? I was like, I'm going to be stranded in Australia. Everyone's going to be in the UK. We're all going to just die where we are. And, it felt very dramatic for a while, didn't it? And so we sort of ripcorded out of Australia. We threw our little Labrador Luna on a plane. God knows how we managed to get her out of Australia as well. And we kind of brought the life back home. So I took a salaried GP position because, of course, I was going to get pregnant soon. And, I wanted to just completely pull back from everything because clearly I was causing all of this infertility in my life. And, I went on a real sort of spiritual journey. I meditated a lot. I got really into sort of crystals and candles and saging and journaling. And I did all the inner work. All the inner work. And I continue to do that. And that, was incredibly healing for me through that journey. But essentially, sadly, 2 years down the line, we've gone through, 2 years of the IVF down the line, we've gone through 4 rounds of IVF. I don't know how much you know about the IVF process, but essentially what they do is they have to switch your hormones off. So they put you into a medical version of the menopause, i.e. they use hormones to switch your hormones off completely. So you dive into menopause for a few weeks before they then start re-stimulating you in a, really, really big way, because instead of you just ovulating on one egg, they want you to ovulate as many as possible. So for example, my first round, I ovulated, I had 15 eggs ready for ovulation. Then you go into the procedure, which is where they essentially pass a needle through to the ovaries and they kind of nip and take each one of these little eggs. And anyway, then the process goes on from there. So as you can imagine, a huge amount of hormones, you dive into the menopause, up out of again. So 2 years down the line from this, I'd not had any aesthetic treatments for a while. I tried to go completely natural with everything, skincare, everything. I don't care about the way I look. I'd always enjoyed makeup, but I was like, no, that's clearly wrong. I must come away from that. And I just found myself in this place where I just didn't recognize myself. And I'd done all the inner work. I'd stripped everything back. But I didn't have any confidence. I didn't feel any sort of motivation spark for the future. Obviously I'd been through a lot, and the toll that the hormones had taken on my skin and everything, I'm quite open with my before and afters showing I had sort of cystic acne through this process, from going into the menopause so much. My skin was really thin. I had really ingrained wrinkles. I was very bloated, water retention, everything. And I just reached this point where I just went, that's it, right? We're stopping all of this. I need to get control back of my life because this isn't how I want to live my life. Obviously wasn't working. We said we'd have a break from the baby thing for a while. And I went to see my friend and I said, just, give me my toxin, give me some profiler. I bought some new makeup, and it was like, all of a sudden, I felt like myself again. And I appreciate that sounds incredibly shallow. Not shallow, I don't know. It's almost very reductionist, isn't it, way of looking at things. But it suddenly opened my eyes and I was like, I started feeling more confident at work, in my GP practice. I started kind of feeling like I wanted to look after my health a little bit better in other ways. I really started taking pride in my appearance again. I started to feel that I had better social interactions. So much, just me, parts of me came back, and it really made me sit back and just think, aesthetics is so much more than just wanting to look perfect and just being shallow and just giving in to pressures of society. There's so much more to it. And it just lit this fire in me. Oh, I am going to start my own clinic and I am going to make this so female focused, but focused around confidence, focused around making somebody feel empowered, educated about aesthetics, understand that it can be very natural and that we're accentuating you and your natural features. And I guess things were kind of born from there, really. So I started my clinic, the Avery Clinic, 2 years ago. Just me on my own in a new area. So I'm based in Leamington Spa. I knew nobody here. I didn't really know that many people in the industry because I've been away in Australia for a while. So yeah, I'm really grateful for where I am today. It's been an incredible journey these past 2 years. And yeah, I feel like I'm on a little bit of a feminist mission to just empower women that, absolutely do the inner work. But that doesn't mean that by enhancing our appearance, by having, I guess, a sense of pride in our appearance as well, can have a huge impact on our entire life and our relationships and how we put ourselves out there.
I love that. I think that's so true. For a lot of people who have aesthetic treatments, it's not that they want to look different or even that they want to look younger. They just want to look and feel like the best version of themselves. And like you say, that has a knock-on effect in so many other areas of your life because you suddenly feel confident. You feel like you look great. So you show up better at work and you do things at work that you wouldn't have done otherwise, and therefore open yourself up for more career opportunities. You're more confident in your relationships. You're more confident to put yourself out there socially. It is so, so powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's all those things. And it made me go that one step further because, of course, I'm aging as well. I'm 38 now. And so, when you're going into your 30s and definitely that second half of your 30s, obviously it just continues to accelerate, doesn't it? But then that became a factor. And I think there's a big misconception as well that women don't want to age. And I think this is something I feel really passionate about. And I talk a lot with my patients, I talk a lot with my colleagues about this, that I personally don't believe that women want to look younger. Not the general patients that I tend to see anyway. I believe that actually what women want is to just feel that they look healthy for their age and they look, I say look good for their age with hesitation, but I think we all kind of just want to look like genetically blessed, 38-year-olds, 50-year-olds or whatever that just doesn't really happen to have wrinkles that are that deep, or no, I just haven't really got such big jowls or whatever it is. And I think that is the key approach with this, with aesthetics in general. I think if you can, you have to offer treatments that are age appropriate and not always be going for the same perfection in everybody. But I think when you help women understand that it's okay to want to tweak certain things that could make them feel better, because there's this whole concept of judgment, isn't there? Now, we all judge. We all inherently judge every single day. Whether we act on those judgments, voice those judgments is a different thing. But there's a few reasons for this. This is the society we live in. And I'm not advocating that we should just go, it's acceptable, therefore we should all just try and conform. That's not necessarily what I mean. But particularly sort of my generation, the millennials, as we call them, we grew up with this Kate Moss chic. We grew up with a certain kind of societal conditioning, really. And that is so deeply ingrained within us. You can do all the inner work, but there's still going to be something there. And again, I'm not trying to say, therefore, you should just try and look that way and conform and give in to all this conditioning and there's these expectations that we set on ourselves and these judgments. But I think there's somewhere in the middle where we can sort of say, I can have compassion for myself for feeling that way. I understand why I judge myself and why I judge others on these sorts of things. And it might be, one person hasn't been as affected as another. So one person, for example, might start getting some grey hairs and not care about it. It doesn't affect them in the slightest. They go out, they live their life every day with grey in their hair and they don't care. And they're putting their best version forward. It doesn't affect their relationships. It doesn't affect their work. It doesn't affect anything. Good for them. I absolutely think that it would be a better world if we were all like that. But the reality is, a lot of us, if not most of us, particularly women, aren't. And it can hold us back to a degree, which again, I'm not saying we therefore need to go out and chase perfection and erase every line or everything, but there's usually just one or two little things that can just, really mean people just don't ever want their photo taken. Or like, common one I hear is, I won't have my photo taken from the side, and often they don't even know why it is. So this was something that I experienced. I used to just think I had the biggest forehead in the world, and I just had this weird pointy nose. And one boy called me a pixie once, and I was just like, oh my God. And I just hated my profile. I hated my photo taken from the side. And as I developed within aesthetics and learned how to, understand anatomy, understand facial proportions and balancing, I realized, it's because I had a particularly weak chin. So my chin sat a little bit further back than what is proportionally balanced, if you like. So I had a dermal filler treatment to my chin, and it was just completely transformative to me. All of a sudden, I was like, oh, all my photos from the side look okay now. And they still look like me, and that's fine. But it meant that, I'm not constantly feeling really self-conscious that nobody's looking at me from the side.
Yeah, it does make such a big difference. I'm exactly the same. I've always been very self-conscious about my side profile. I think I am probably due a little bit of a filler in my chin now, but it did make such a big difference.
Yeah. So a lot of what we can do in aesthetics is offering options, isn't it? Really, like going in and having that chin filler, for example, might not be for everybody, but it just talking through these different options. I think it's educating
Yeah.
people as well.
It's also about choice, I think, and it's not like you say, some people get grey hairs and they don't care and they still put their best face forward, but some people aren't like that, and it's about having the choices and being able to do things.
Exactly. And it's what bothers you, isn't it? And, we're moving away from this sort of prescriptive system of you come in and I am the expert, so I will tell you what you need doing. And, I still get patients sometimes coming in and say, oh, just tell me what I need. And I'll say, you need nothing. I'm not going to be able to help you if that's what we're starting with. Tell me what you feel bothers you. Tell me the emotions you feel. Tell me, how you feel you might look. And then we can kind of work from there. I have, we're all genetically blessed in some areas and then not so blessed in other areas. And, I have particularly bad sort of fine lines and crow's feet around my eyes. Always have. I have quite thin skin there. And, I've tried toxin treatments there, but it kind of gives me a bit of a sort of vacant look in my eyes. So I've just sort of said, that it is what it is. It doesn't actually bother me that much, to be perfectly honest. So it's not something I'm focusing on the mirror. It doesn't affect how I show up in the world. So therefore, could be better, but we move on. We, okay, that's fine. I've had other people comment on my Instagram and say, you need to get your crow's feet Botox done. Like, yep. And I know I put myself out there for that sort of thing, obviously being an aesthetics doctor, but the reality is if there's something specific that's bothering you, from a perfection perspective, you can sit in front of a patient who has got lines and they've got volume loss in certain areas, all very natural sort of aging changes, but it is one single wrinkle in the most random of places. It might be one that just kind of cuts across the chin or that I haven't even noticed on them. That's what's bothering them.
And that's all they think about, and that's all they see.
Yeah, and that's fine. So, it's also, I think, understanding that it's okay to care about how we look. Obviously, there are extremes of that, body dysmorphia we have to be very careful about, if something's affecting you on a daily basis and it doesn't stop, that's a whole different thing. But we live in a visual world, we have eyes. We have eyes. The continuation of our species it depends on sexual attraction, and therefore we value beauty. We value beauty in every way. We pick flowers, we watch sunset, we are attracted to beautiful things. So are other animals. I mean, is the peacock superficial? We're not out there calling peacocks superficial, are we? Because, I mean, they are very extra when it comes to performance and things. So I think it's, again, having compassion for that. It is okay caring how you look. And if you are just someone that doesn't, great, good for you. You live your life. Other people can live theirs in a different way. And then I think the last thing that I feel really passionate about discussing and having these open conversations with patients about is we as women will fear aging because biologically we have a off point. We're kind of living to this timer. And, back in, I don't know, caveman days, women probably wouldn't have even reached menopause because, the average life expectancy was like 35 or something, wasn't it? So we wouldn't have ever got to that point. So obviously, the longer that we're living, we're reaching an age where our reproductive system was never meant to last that long. So it's like, God, I'm done. I haven't got anything more for you. So it switches off. Now, God was clearly a man because men can obviously
Go
continue.
forever.
Go forever. Their system doesn't switch off. And that's something that we also just need to understand is that a man can recreate until they die. But they constantly have the hormones of wanting to continue to recreate, technically until they die. I mean, obviously it does lessen and there are the hormone changes that happen in men's health, but they still are going to be attracted to fertile women. And this is on a biological thing. Now, obviously, as a society, we've moved on a lot further from that. So we have, relationships are far more than just pure sexual attraction. But, this does explain why men will always be attracted to that body type of a fertile female. When women go through menopausal changes, the main hormone that we now don't have so much of anymore is estrogen. Estrogen actually drives where our fat is deposited on our body. So we tend to deposit it more on our hips and thighs and our bum, less around our waist. But then when we go into menopause, we actually go into more of a male pattern of fat distribution. So it's something that I remember my mum turned around to me and was, "They've never had a tummy before, and all of a sudden, everything's gone off my bum and thighs and it's sitting on my tummy." And, that's how men tend to carry fat, isn't it? They tend to carry it more around the waist and the midline rather than on their legs. And so we kind of shift into masculine features in many, many ways, really. And it makes women feel invisible. It makes women feel like they're done and they're not worthy of anything anymore. So I think this is, again, it doesn't mean we have to completely reverse that and pretend that we're still fertile and blah, blah, blah. But it just how society interacts. It's just understanding that, no, it doesn't mean it's okay that, men can trade you in for a younger model, but it kind of makes you understand why women do fear aging, and it is rational.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And obviously the holistic side and the regenerative side is quite important to you. That's what you've kind of specialized in. How do you bring that into your practice with, and integrate it into your treatments with your patients?
Yeah. So I tend to run my consultations on a very sort of intimate basis. So I have from the beginning said, to me, the initial consultation is everything. I have an hour with a new patient and we sit there and we go through everything. I mean, of course, we go through medical history and things like that. And, we open up to their concerns, what their goals might be, etc. But you as the expert, you're there to try and educate them and help them to understand that there is sort of multiple layers to this. I sometimes use a cake analogy. You've kind of got the cake, which is your kind of the structure of of things. So that might be things like where you might want some filler for volume loss or to change the proportions of things, or sometimes even toxin. But you've also got the icing on the cake as well. And this is your skin health. And obviously, there's a huge shift at the moment. There's so many more modalities for treating skin health available now, which is amazing. So I think educating on people that you wouldn't have cake without icing, but also icing without cake. It's very much this. You're going to get the most natural results. You're going to look the most balanced and harmonious if we're treating things from all angles. So for me, part of that consultation is talking through their skin routine and educating them about what active skincare ingredients are as well. We talk about what's going on in terms of aging. We talk about, what collagen is and all of these sorts of things. I give them an educational booklet as well. So it's something that I created for my consultation because it's a lot to take in. We talk about it all day long. So we think, well, surely everybody knows that, a retinoid increases your cell turnover. And they don't. It's very confusing. And so I find that's a really useful thing for me to have because I know I give a huge amount of information in these consultations. And I just treat it as a time that we can get to know one another. We can develop that trust together. And then, a big focus on that is essentially what I call, we need to take your skin to the gym. And I'm like your personal trainer, but you need to be looking after your diet and exercise at home. That kind of those sort of analogies can help them to understand like, right, okay, so you can come to me, we can do your microneedling treatments, we can give you your profiling, polynucleotides, any of these things that are collagen stimulating, but there's things that you can be doing at home as well. And then, of course, I always do talk about some of those. I get all options really available, even surgical options. I think it's really important to talk about all options available just so that
you've covered all of the bases.
Exactly.
And they're fully informed about the things that they could be doing when they leave the clinic. And do you think that because spending a full hour with consultations is probably quite unheard of, do you think that you've seen a difference in patient outcomes or satisfaction since committing more time to the consultation
absolutely. And
process?
it's something that it pays you back tenfold in the long run. I mean, from a business perspective, it works always if you do it that way, because really what is key, and maybe this is kind of from my GP time, but it's connection, it's trust, especially in this day and age where people feel understandably terrified of aesthetic treatments and things looking unnatural. And, there's so many influences and advice out there that isn't medically based, and it's so confusing. So to spend that hour with them, to talk through each of these options, to give them value in that time. And I don't charge for my consultation either. So I hold there's a booking fee just to confirm the appointment, but that's then either redeemable or refundable if, they choose this isn't right for them or there isn't the right treatment for them. I think I've given it back once. So it's hopefully working fairly well. But what we do is we set a plan from there. And look, to be honest, sometimes, it doesn't mean every single person says, great, well, let's, I'll have a culture profiler and we'll do the toxin and we'll do some of the, filler to help with the volume deficit changes or whatever. Doesn't necessarily mean they all sign up straight away for everything, but it touch points, isn't it? It's developing that trust. And I think something that we just don't have much of at the moment in both the NHS and everything else is time with an expert, really. So when you can give that to them, if you can give them that value at that initial point, then you know them. So it brings a lot more familiarity each time that you're seeing them. They go home, they think about things. And I think according to my figures and numbers, I have a very good retention rate from I'm a new practice, a new clinic really, but from a small pool of patients, I have a good retention rate, and the majority of them will be on multiple treatments with me. So it's very much we go on that journey. So, when you look at the lifetime value of a patient, by putting that hour in with them to begin with, it just pays off tenfold.
It makes sense that it would,
Yeah.
because people will feel very connected to you. They'll feel like they've gotten to know you, they really trust you, and they'll walk away, and it's not something that you're gonna get from going to, like, a high street clinic or a big chain clinic, where they've got a bit of a conveyor belt approach, and it's kind of one in, one out. You've got that real personal connection, and you've taken time to build that rapport with them, so
Yeah, and I think I mean, obviously, you can see things as pros and cons, can't you? I mean, I would say I had the advantage of being an experienced injector, but starting from scratch. So I had time. The first 6 weeks I was open, I didn't see a patient. I literally came in every day, sat here and was like, here, maybe somebody would walk in, and that's okay. So I gave that time, but then realized that actually that was what was then allowing things to build really nicely. And I'd not had that time before. When I'd worked at other people's clinics in the past, they'd been it was a bigger operation essentially. And from what I see, the bigger the clinic is, understandably, things have to be standardized a little bit more because there's more people working there. And often there just isn't the capacity necessarily to offer more time. And so, you get that less of that, more intimacy really, isn't it?
yeah,
With
yeah.
with people. So
Going back to what you just said about when you first opened and you literally didn't have a patient for weeks, and obviously your clinic, like you say, is quite new. You're only
yeah,
2-3 years old. How have you grown the
20
business?
months. Not
Oh, is it
quite.
your third 3-year anniversary next month?
No, not it's my second year
Oh,
anniversary
wow.
next
Amazing.
month.
Oh, happy
Yeah.
early
So
birthday to your
yeah,
clinic.
thank you.
So yeah, less than 2 years old at the moment. How have you grown it to where it is today? What have you found has worked for you in terms of getting, your name out there and getting patients through the door?
Oh gosh. So I probably put in about 4 months' work before I actually opened the doors. So things like I chose my branding, I created everything myself. I was like, taught myself how to build a website. So the website I have at the moment is still the one that I built. I designed my logo. I discovered Canva and was like, oh, okay, I can have a play around on here. And I started kind of getting everything sort of set up in that way. But we did not have we didn't have any funds for it, to be perfectly and very openly honest. We had spent £20,000 on IVF and we were feeling it. And, so essentially I was working full time as a GP in a salaried position. And I remember I would be actually, I wasn't salaried, I was locuming at the time, that's right. And so I would, as soon as I'd finished work, I would be like on the computer trying to come up with exactly how I wanted the clinic to be. Slowly kind of got to the point where we're like, right, okay, let's just open then. I'd read a little bit about how SEO works. So I tried to, impregnate my website with some SEO, which actually, slowly did kind of work. I took on a business coach at about 6 months, and that completely changed everything. It is the one thing that I would highly, highly recommend. And we were umming and ahhing about doing it because it was a lot of money for us at the time. And, it was like a 3-month intensive course with our business coach. And she specializes specifically in the aesthetics industry and loads of experience. And so we would have sort of weekly Zoom meetings with her. And, I'm a medic, I'm a doctor. I want to talk anything about marketing. I didn't even know the difference between PR and marketing. I was like, is that not the same thing? No, I didn't know anything about just business in general. So it was so useful to have her guidance on things. And really, it was a passion project for me. I could live, breathe, eat, everything to do with it. And I found my groove on social media as well. And I think that was, as it is with everybody, I just had to force myself to just show up. And I look back at my earlier videos and I cringe. But I remember one day reading that you just have to film one take, post, film one take, post. And it was the most painful, but it made you kind of wing it a bit more,
Mm.
and then you get better.
The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Yeah.
Yeah, and so things like that really, really helped. Yeah, and then I did a few, obviously went to all the conferences, things like that. The other thing is I reached out to the brands. So it was a tricky one for me because again, I had nobody kind of knew me. I hadn't got any previous relationships with any brands. And your handful of people from the aesthetics industry from years ago when I initially trained with them before I'd gone to Australia and worked in other places. So I didn't have much of a presence, and I had a bit of a negative experience with some brands that were like, well, yeah, call us back in a couple of years. And then as things grew, they might be contacting me to say, oh, have you tried Everyone? But the brands that I did reach out to were incredible, really, really supportive. Reveness is the filler brand that I now represent as well. Really, really proud to work with them. They have been incredibly supportive from the beginning. HA Derma as well with Profilo. This is my personal journey. Obviously, everybody had their own different brand, but I work with Nuceiva as well, who, again, all of these brands, what they're doing is they're offering educational events these days, which I think are amazing. So they can help you further your knowledge anyway in just injecting anatomy, all of this sort of things, but they support you on the journey as well, and even some of them as far to helping you out with marketing and even events. So demo events was something I started doing in my clinic, which I would say they're probably the biggest turnaround thing that I did for my sort of small, not very well known clinic. I did started doing these demo event evenings where I would essentially set up sort of 3 models for the evening, invite lots of people over to the clinic. So these are not patients, these are people who are curious in aesthetics. Some people might have commented on a few things on Instagram, or I'd explore with patients, do you have any friends or whatever? Invite only event, bring them along, and essentially, have a glass of fizz and a cupcake or whatever. And I would demonstrate some treatments, and I would say, look, this is a safe space for you to observe and just ask whatever burning questions that you've got. And it really, really took off. It really, really seemed to work because that's what people want, isn't it? People are terrified. People want to ask those questions. So they worked really, really well for me. And I continue to do those evenings. And from a sort of portfolio career perspective, so now I'm working with brands, I'm a trainer, and I'm starting to do more public speaking, live injecting, things like that. So actually having done that side of it just in the safe space of my own clinic with patients has really built my confidence and things like that. So I think that not only is that a fantastic way to bring in patients to your clinic, I'd probably say about 80% of patients who come to those evenings go on then book in with me as a long-term patient. I always do a demonstration of cheek filler. So I do a toxin treatment, cheek filler treatment, Profilo treatment, and more recently I've been doing some polynucleotides as well. And I picked cheek treatment because it's very simple, it's very straightforward, it's quite quick. We're not buffing around with cannulas or anything. It's simple. I just use the needle for this, and you have to pick the right demo patient. So use somebody maybe in their early 40s, so they are showing signs of sort of volume loss in that area, but nothing too complicated or anything. And it always goes down really, really well because you treat the first side, sort of very simple injection points along the bone. You get them to sit up, and there's just
You
this
see the difference.
flood the
Yeah.
room because it is a beautiful difference, isn't it? And it's something that we as injectors talk all the time with our patients, whether they're coming with nasolabial folds, they're coming with lower face, laxity, or beginning of jowls. And we say, well, let's look at your cheeks and let's go back to that part. And so to be able to demonstrate that is really lovely. And yeah, I think the first time I did it, I had like 10 cheek treatments the following week booked
Wow, that's
afterwards.
amazing.
And yeah, just the difference that it made. So things like that definitely do help.
I love that. I think events is something that's so underrated. You hear about social
Absolutely.
media,
Yeah.
email marketing, ads all the time, but when you can
Yeah.
actually get people through the door who are curious, perhaps a little bit hesitant, and there's so many barriers that, to purchase that we have with patients in aesthetics. They're scared about, pain,
Yeah.
cost, what if something goes wrong. But
Yeah.
if they can come in and see it for themselves and see
It's
this
seeing
patient
it and
lying there
educating.
who's not wincing in pain, who's
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
and see the result for themselves. I think that's probably the most
Exactly.
powerful
Yeah,
marketing that you can
exactly.
do.
Yeah, and I think just showing them like, look, the person isn't, you've done a filler treatment, this terrifying sort of treatment that all these, you see the Anyways Essex, or you see, some, let's say, more overfilled faces and people are terrified. And then it's like, oh, this person's just had cheek filler and wow, they just look completely refreshed. They don't look like
Mm,
they've got big fat cheeks at all.
yeah.
And they barely flinched when it happened. It wasn't traumatic, I
Mm.
think to see it took, you know, handful of seconds almost for each injection point. It didn't, and it's like, oh gosh, wow, okay, that's totally different to how I
To what yeah, what you
yes.
might have
There
had in your
isn't
head.
blood spurting everywhere.
Yeah.
I think people just have these visions of like, oh my God, it's like surgery. So yeah, I think they're a really, really lovely thing. But I think the key, I think for me, and again, I love educating. I loved educating in my GP role as well. But I love teaching. I love talking things through. I am very much an oversharer and an over explainer myself, as you might have noticed. But it works really, really nicely in this capacity because I think actually giving value for free to your patients, same as social media, to your following, will pay you back tenfold because it's honest, you're giving them value, and it's not just marketing, marketing,
Yeah,
marketing.
absolutely. On the topic of your social media, because you've been very, like you say, you put yourself out there a lot on your social media, and you've also been very open and honest and transparent within your content about your own journey and your IVF journey. How
Yeah,
do you think that has helped kind of build connections with your audience and help them relate to you? Do you think sharing more of your journey and showing up has paid off and drawn people to you?
I do, yeah, and I think it's been a battle of conscience, I think, for me, a lot of that. I mean, I naturally am a sharer, some people really aren't, and that's absolutely okay, but I naturally am. So it's actually quite alien for me to be, "No, I'm a doctor, I'm a professional, you've got to have this doctor-patient relationship, you can't cross that boundary." We, taught from medical school and, in my GP world, not to be overly familiar with patients. I even in my GP world, I had a very different approach with that because to me, I think to build trust and to get that connection with them, you got to be on a level with them. And we do it with our body language. We mirror people, all of these things. So I think it's taken me a while. It's taken me a few years to actually reach the point and go, if I'm trying to be this very professional, like, hello, my name's Dr. Alison Colville, and I'm an aesthetics doctor. Let's look at some of the reasons the skin. Now, don't get me wrong, loads and loads of doctors within the aesthetics industry are what I would call incredibly professional, like super, super polished, and they're so professional and extremely knowledgeable and great. And that is their USP in a way, isn't it? And that's their personality as well. And that great. I don't align with that. And so I, for a long time, was trying to be a bit more like that. I would be like, stop being so jokey or stop being so this. Like, come on, you gotta be professional. Like, don't share that information. I just felt like I wasn't connecting with people. And then I did this post on my Instagram, which was I've been through menopause 4 times. And I remember doing it. And I was sat on the sofa on a Sunday morning, like 7 o'clock. I'd woken up early. Tom was still upstairs in bed. And, I remember just sitting there. I was like, yeah, do you know what? I'm just going to put that out there. And I pulled up a load of photos of me throughout that journey, where I got all the drugs that come through. And I remember sending my friend, I think it was, a selfie of me the day we found out our first round had failed. And I was drinking a glass of wine at midday, sat in a conservatory, having cried nonstop for an hour or so. And I sent this photo of me being like, thumbs up, yay. It was a really sort of candid photo. And then I pulled in photos, and then here was me developing the clinic, and this drove me to this, and this, the story I've kind of told you today. And I just got all these messages. It got all these kind of responses. And a lot of my patients were coming in and they were talking about it. A lot of new patients were like, well, I saw that post. And it wasn't just people who'd been on a fertility journey or anything. I think it just makes you a real person. I think it
Makes
makes
you
you,
human.
yeah, it makes you relatable.
Mhm.
And also,
Yeah.
sometimes people look at you on social media and think, oh, look, she lives such a perfect life. I mean, we all do, don't we? We all look at other people and think, oh, it's all right for them. Look at their amazing life, because, for example, I'm going through a house renovation at the moment, and I look at anyone who's got a blooming sofa at the moment, and I think, oh, all right for you, you've got a sofa to sit on, because we're literally sat on dining chairs in our 70s, kitchen at the moment. But that's what we do. We kind of look at that. But yeah, I'm going through a house renovation. I very rarely film in that part of the house. I film in clinic, and I film in my lovely bathroom that we've done. I always joke about it.
No one
Low
would ever
TV
know.
filming in my bathroom.
Yeah.
So, I think I really try to balance what I put out on social media, mainly because that is who I am as a person. So, that's not to say everybody should share really vulnerable personal things, but it then led me down a journey that actually, even just something as simple as being like, oh, look, I'm having a breakout, I've got some spot coming up, because
Yeah.
just because you're an aesthetics doctor doesn't mean like you don't also get spots sometimes, or things like that happen. And I do really think it has made a big difference in, yeah, it's just people relating to
Yeah.
you, which that's what people want these
That's
days.
what people want. Yeah, they don't want the perfect and the polished. And I'm constantly explaining this to people. And yes, that's
Yeah,
some people's brands, or some people feel more comfortable showing up that way. But
yeah,
don't try and be something that you're not, and don't feel that you have to show up like that if you don't want to. And like you say, if that doesn't align with you, because it will
that's
make it a
right.
lot harder
Yeah.
for you to actually put yourself out
That's
there.
right. I think the more authentic that you can be, and look, none of us are completely 100% authentic, because you just can't. Like, there's a camera there, and you make a choice, and yeah, there is something completely inappropriate for social media or what have you. But like, I will all, when I'm in clinic, I'm all dressed up and glamorous and in my heels and whatever. But honestly, the rest of the time I'm at home, I'm not wearing makeup. I'm in my dog walking clothes. We live in a cottage in the countryside. It is not a glamorous life as such. We're doing a house renovation. So I do try and balance it with that kind of thing as well. And I think another thing from a sort of marketing perspective, when I was at the beginning of things and learning about marketing, learning about what's my brand, what is my what do I want to put out there, what patients do I want to attract? I was doing it in this sort of like, right, I've got my avatar of this person who was like a 42-year-old. What was it? I think she was like 42. She was like an accountant. She'd got two young children, and I painted this whole picture of like, that's my ideal client, sort of like pre-perimenopausal, So it was like, right, I need to aim everything to that person. And every time I'd pick up my phone to do something on social media, I was like, what would that person want to hear today? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And I remember I was dancing around the kitchen. I had something like, what did I have on? Britney Spears. Love a bit of Britney Spears. I just wanted to do a quick story. I don't know, like either filming or just being like, this song is such a good song, or whatever I was going to put. And I remember thinking, no, can't do that, because 45-year-old, whatever that I'm meant to be aiming at, they're probably more maybe Spice Girls era or maybe whatever. So that's not going to align with it. And I think one day I just turned around and said, you know what? You will attract patients to you. And actually, I kind of flipped it on its head, and I just said, no, if I just put out my energy out there, the right people will come to me. And maybe that means they're slightly more my age, because, you hear Britney, and if you were 14 or whatever when Britney was big in my day, you're going to get a hit of dopamine and think, oh, yeah, that's how it works, isn't it? But actually, it's worked in all levels. So it isn't just, I don't just get patients who are my age who had the exact same life experiences as me. I think it is just because you're putting an authentic version of you out there. I've got my credentials, I've got my exams, I've got my clinic, I've got this, that, and the other. I don't need to constantly be like, I'm a professional. Look how much I've studied. Look how safe I am as an injector. Sometimes you want someone who's like, I'm not going to be intimidated by that person as well. I'm going to be able to feel calm and relaxed with that
Yeah.
person. So that's kind of,
They feel like they know you
yeah.
before they've even walked through the door, and that just takes that fear
Yeah.
away, that fear element that people might have when them, because it is daunting when people, if they've never had injectables before and they don't know what to expect,
Absolutely.
they're going to be very nervous. But if they've been watching you on socials and reading what you've got to say and listening to what you're
Yeah.
saying in your video content, they'll feel like they know you. They feel like they really understand your approach. They know what they're going to, they know what to expect when they walk through your door.
Absolutely. And I think you need to carry that tone through all your social. I mean, I still do all my own email marketing. I do my own social media. I do my website. I do everything still. So I very much try and make it sound like me. I mean, your website does need to be slightly more professional. You're not just going to, you're not quite as chatty, let's say, on there, but it still needs to have that undertone of what your feel is. And I would say, so for example, when I first started out, I was like, right, no, I don't want to be cheap. And I'm a medic. And so I need to be luxury. But I realized this word luxury was really wrong for me because I would not class myself as a luxury clinic. I want to definitely be high quality, high value clinic, but actually I am more relatable, approachable. I want it to feel homely. So I completely changed it that I want my clinic space to feel homely. As you see, plants everywhere, fluffy things everywhere. I want it so that it's still clinical where it needs to be clinical. Obviously, we have to make sure our clinical areas are like that. But it's when I'm writing my email to patients as well. Sometimes it's just like going, my gosh, hasn't it been glorious sunshine the past few days? Or, it's just those little touches. That works for me because I am quite chatty and that's who I am. And so that comes across authentically for me. It's something that has probably limited me giving out some of this sort of work to other people, like help with social media or help with website or email marketing and things, because I wouldn't want it to then become very sort of corporate for me. Obviously, other clinics, absolutely that works. And that is why somebody comes to see you, because you've got this beautiful, luxurious corporate clinic, and a lot of the patients are going to go for that. And there's enough patients out there for all of us, I think. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, don't worry about competition. Don't worry about, oh, but they're doing that. You need to really just dive into just trying to get you across with that, especially when you're starting out on your own. If you grow into a bigger clinic, of course, it needs to be a bit more of a brand message overall. And so things would change a lot when you got to that stage because you've got other members of staff and things. But
Yeah, but I think practitioners should make the most of it while it is just them, if they're thinking of growing this in the future,
absolutely.
because it's the sole practitioners, the personal brands that are much easier to grow on social media, rather than if you have a clinic logo as your profile picture and a big team, it becomes, I
Hmm.
guess, a bit more distant
Yeah. Yeah.
from potential patients. And I always say that people don't choose, when people are considering aesthetics, they're not buying fillers and they're not buying Profilo, that's not what sells it to them. They know that they have concerns and that these are the potential options for them, but it's you that they're going to buy into, and that's, it's the way you show up, and the way you show up in your content and the messaging that you put out there that's going to help you stand out from your competition down the road, and it's going to be what makes them buy into you rather than anybody else.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is.
Yeah. I did that with my social media. So I started up with just, the Avery Clinic as my Instagram handle. And then I realized that, for me, I wanted a bit more of what you might term a portfolio career. So not just it's me and my clinic and I'm just building my clinic. Your clinic is your bread and butter. It is your little baby, and it's where the bills get paid as well. And it's your reflection of your work as your clinic. But, for me, I like the teaching and I like training, and I'm working with brands now. I love the traveling element as well. So all of these things are going on as well. So I made a decision, right, well, I need to start a not personal, professional, but personal account. So then I had my Dr. Alison Colville account and sort of separated the two out so that my content a lot of the content is crossed over, but I do let the personal things specifically on the clinic website, clinic Instagram, whereas on mine, I read something really good, like right at the beginning about social media, which I've kind of loosely stuck by the whole time. So I am somebody, if I try to plan and schedule my social media, and again, everybody's completely different with it. So I'm not necessarily recommend that everybody follow my way of doing it. I am someone that if I sit and plan, right, I need to do a video on, 3 areas of toxin in the lower face. I need to do a video on, how Profilo works. I need to do, if I do that and then I show up, I'm so creatively stunted that I'm just like, oh, I don't know what to say. And it's
Mm,
not coming out properly and it's all feeling a bit stiff and not right. And then you don't do it. And then you feel guilty because you haven't posted and blah, blah, blah. Whereas I tend to work much better on a, oh, I'm inspired to do something about this. So what I started doing was instead of doing that, I would do a clinic day and I'd just be chatting with a patient about something and they would ask a question. You'd be like, that's a really good question. And then you go, right, I'm going to do a video on that then because it's fresh in your mind. You just had that
yeah.
conversation and you've got that creative inspiration about it. So I stopped planning. I completely stopped planning. And I kind of just trusted that whatever wanted to sort of move through me on the day. And it might be a silly, funny reel.
Yeah.
It might be some educational content. That really worked for me and allowed me to be more authentic rather than planning a post on X subject. Or like, for example, you do these wonderful, like, here's your March content, some ideas, which yours are amazing. I always look at them and I'm like, I don't want to completely copy all this, but I love it. But for me, for example, I might look at that and go, oh yeah, I'm going to do something on that. But might not do exactly how you've put it, but I'll say, that's a great one,
It
actually. Oh,
inspires, it
it
gives them
inspires you.
inspiration.
Yeah. And then you can go and do something on it. So, and I kind of roughly, I would say on my stories, follow bit of a ratio of like 25% of what I do is some sort of personal content. So it might be, it's usually me and my dogs, or, it might be, I don't know, I'm out and about somewhere or doing something, or here's my dinner, or, whatever you feel like posting. 25% of it is like just fully educational. 25% might be treatments related that you're doing in clinic, that sort of thing. And then 25% might be marketing or selling or talking about skin products that you do or something in that sense. And I think if you kind
Mm,
of can, in your head, and again, it doesn't need to be prescriptive, like, how many posts have I done today and did that follow that? It's just that roughly, because if you do too much of one, it people get turned off, don't they? They don't want to be sold to all day long. But equally, they might not only want educational content, because if you throw in, like yesterday, my Labrador just decided to sunbathe in front of our tip. Like, we've got this tip and she was using the tip to prop herself up. And, so I'd post something like that, like, oh, the glamour of, sunbathing for a Labrador or something. Something completely random to break up the,
yeah.
and again, it makes you relatable, feel like a normal person, and that you're not just there to sell to everybody. Like, come and see me in clinic so I can fix
Sell stuff
you,
all the time.
it's
Yeah.
that sort of
It's
thing.
definitely having a balance, like you say, the educational stuff is
Yeah.
important. I always say that's great for education and nurturing people who are in that decision stage. But then the connectional, telling your own stories, sharing experiences that people can relate to, that's just as important. And then, yeah, you've got the promotional stuff, but it's about having a balance, You're
Yeah.
not going to connect with people or even stand out from your competitors if all you're doing is posting before and after photos. It's just makes it, yeah, a lot more difficult. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely a very good approach to take. And I also love the fact about being inspired, about
Yeah.
the things on the day. I say to people, I think that's a great approach to have as well for stories, because a lot of people say to me, oh, I never know what to post about on my stories. And I'm like, the best stories come from those day-to-day moments. And if you're, like you say, having a chat with a patient in clinic and they say something to you and you think, oh, actually, that's quite a good question, I'll
Yeah.
go on and talk about that on my stories. And then you can tell a bit of a story
Yeah.
about it. This patient came to see me today and she was worried about this and this is what we did. And, and people can relate to that, because if that patient's asking that question, it's likely that a lot of other people are also wondering the same
Absolutely.
thing. So yeah, I love that approach.
Yeah, you can dip into your archives
Yeah,
every now and then. If it's a particularly grey day and I'm stuck at home in my Renault and I'm, I don't know, not feeling like going on camera, you might just post an old before and after that you did and back
yeah,
it. Or
repurpose something.
yeah, but also you can have some time off. I think that's the other thing. It doesn't, regularly is a good thing to hold yourself to long term, but it doesn't mean that you every single day need to do X number of posts and you have to post twice a week or suddenly everybody's gonna stop following you or something. But I think also it depends what you want out of your Instagram, for example. So my clinic Instagram, I wouldn't say that I consciously try to drive for new followers because for me, that's not where I get my new patients from. What I would say is my Instagram is perhaps a bit of a shop front
Mm,
rather than it being, very rarely does somebody say, oh, I came across you on Instagram because they've got to kind of be in your area as well. It might be different in London, but not everybody lives near Leamington Spa, obviously. So for me, it's a shop front. So therefore, if you haven't posted for a week or 2 weeks or something, you've still got the really good content on there. That if somebody, as long as you posted recently, you don't want to go on someone's Instagram. The last post was 2022 because you're just thinking, well, are they dead? Are they
yeah,
are they
save
cloning?
until
Like,
yeah.
what? But as long as you've done something relatively recently and, yeah, it's showing different parts of you. They might see you, maybe you've got an educational post in that first, like, I don't know, 9 posts that you've got up there. You can pin a 3 to your profile, obviously, and you just don't need to worry about it too much. Whereas I'd say my doctor profile one, which is more, I guess, about me growing my profile within the industry, and I work with brands and all, like I say, all these are the things that are now coming up for me in my career path. That is a little bit different and it is a bit more social media driven because that's the way it is. Again, not
Mm.
everybody has to do it. Some of the most well-known, well-respected people in the industry do not, well, they might have an account,
They
but
don't post
they don't
regularly.
ever go on it or do anything. Again, completely fine. There is a different path for anyone, but I think you just got to ask what you're trying to get out of your social media. And the thing is don't be afraid to ask for help and support with this. Like I really enjoy doing Instagram, which I think I'm probably one of not many people. I would say the majority of people, I hate Instagram, hate having to
Yeah,
show up, I hate
come
to
up with
record
ideas and
reel.
yeah.
Oh, it's so draining to them. And I was at that place before I kind of said, "Do you know what? I'm just going to try and be as much me as possible." I'd always thought me was a bit too much and it wasn't very professional doctor like, me chatting about Britney Spears and whatever kind of rubbish that I'm usually talking about. But I think, yeah, for some people, it's not natural. It feels really icky and they don't want to do it. And that's fine. Like, I've got friends who are exactly like that, who are exactly the same stage as me or have beautiful clinic, have loads going on in aesthetic, and they get help. They have somebody who comes and films content days for them, every now and then at their clinic. And then they have enough material and then they run their
Mm.
Instagram for them. And they just jump on every now and then and either just do a quick video, show their face a little bit, take the odd snap. And that's absolutely fine. Like they're not trying to be a lifestyle influencer. And that makes her a beautiful clinic page or personal page. And that's, yeah, that's
Yeah, it's
fine.
finding what works for you. Yeah, no, I love
Mhm.
that. Yeah, and it just shows that it's not always the same for everyone. Everyone has their own journey with
Totally.
it. But no, I love that. That's yeah, really, really interesting, and hopefully will give people a little bit of inspiration if they've been wondering how to show up or the best way to show up. It doesn't need to be perfectly polished. You
And
can
it
just show up
won't
and talk about
be.
this Britney Spears
Exactly. I promise
if
you,
that aligns with you.
it won't be perfect. And you'll hate yourself every time you put a video on.
Yeah.
I really, really did. Go back and look at my fish. God, here we go. People are going to go back and look at my first videos. And I felt really awkward. I'd be like, sat there like this. You
Yeah,
could, or
we've
some
all
of
been
them,
there.
I would look back and be like, God, I tried too hard there, didn't I? I was trying to be
Mm,
funny about something that I really wasn't. And it, but nobody actually cares. You
mm.
care. They don't care. Some people are really natural, some people are less so, but does it really matter? And you do just you do just start feeling more comfortable
As
yourself
time goes on. Yeah.
as time goes
Yeah.
on.
Amazing. Parking the marketing chat for a second, because as we get to the end of the episode, I want to make sure I do ask you about this. Now, when we spoke initially before we started recording, we talked about, misconceptions about fillers, and you're a huge advocate for dermal fillers.
Yeah.
And you actively speak with patients about the stigma and the fear surrounding filler treatments. Why do you think fillers get such a bad reputation compared to other treatments? And where do you see kind of fillers fitting into the future of aesthetics? Do you think attitudes are shifting? Do you think people will be turning less to fillers in the future? Or do you think, that they're here to stay and they'll always have their place?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? So I have this conversation every day with people in clinic. It is completely understandable why people are terrified of filler. Completely understandable, because we see so many overfilled faces out there, whether it's celebrities, whether it's, just walking the street. Unfortunately, in the UK, obviously we're all fighting for better regulations and things with fillers, but there's trends, isn't there, to have bigger lips or bigger cheeks or really strong jawlines, and all this tends to be affecting the younger population more so. So, people are watching these beautiful young, 20-year-olds that might just suddenly have more augmented features and things like that. So what it is that good filler work shouldn't be detectable. Even to someone trained in aesthetics, I'm constantly looking at other practitioners thinking, I wonder what they've had done, because you shouldn't be able to tell. And if you can tell, then it's not such good work, is it really? So for the average person who might look at someone like you and I and just be like, oh, they're just genetically blessed to have that great chin or a straight nose, or they just don't really have many wrinkles or whatever. Whereas they would know that, oh, look at her, she's had terrible filler, look at her silly lips, or blah, 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 because they don't look natural anymore. And when you go beyond the realms of natural, it is not attractive and it is obvious to anyone and everyone. So therefore, it's like filler makes you look like that. So, common misconception. And then, of course, with social media, there's so much misinformation. There's so much sort of terrifying, the recent sort of scans that are showing, look how this filler that's migrated everywhere in her face and it was there for 30 years or whatever, it's very inflammatory, it's very sensationalist, it's very headline driven. And so, I get friends all the time asking me about this, just being like, oh, did you see that? Does filler really migrate like that? And then you actually say, well, a lot of that filler might have actually been very expertly placed in those areas, and you have these discussions. So, patients now come in and they know words like migration. They said, oh, I know it can block a blood vessel, or you can go blind, and things like that. So I spend a lot of time talking about filler. I'm very open with patients, and I will sit there in front of them and I will say, I've had filler here, and here. And they'll go, what? Oh, okay. I'm very open, showing my before and afters. And then I explain to them what filler is. Obviously, we're not trying to sort of sell it. We're not trying to sort of say, see, absolutely fine. Like, they need to understand the risks. We're going through all of that to get true consent. We know from our medical training, if you're consenting for anything, whether it's a surgery or just to take someone's blood pressure, you've got to kind of fully explain what you're doing and the risks and everything that's associated with it. So the first thing I will say to anyone is, of course you're terrified of filler. I say, no, I don't get people walking in this room going, oh, yes, I'm so excited to have it. It looks great, because people don't know about it. So when you start explaining about the aging process, so again, this is where the education comes in. And for me, spending that hour with them, we're talking about the volume loss in different areas and how things are shifting and how that then creates that and that then creates that. And then you're actually then using filler to revolumize. Again, terminology for all of this is really, really important. So rather than like we're filling that and we're blowing that up, and it's actually saying we're just revolumizing that area. We're adding a little bit more volume in. And again, not because we're trying to make you look 10 years younger, your friend might actually have very good volume there at your age because genetically, that's not where she's struggling. She might have really strong forehead lines where you don't have any, but she might actually have really, really good cheek structure still, which is why you feel you look more tired and whereas she doesn't, but she might be really bothered about her forehead wrinkles. So when you explain it in that way, um, then I think that's a really useful way to talk about it with patients. And I think from the perspective of, this whole filler fatigue is the term at the moment, isn't it? Like, have we all got tired of filler? Is everybody just going, no, get rid of all your filler, dissolve it all. We don't need filler because we've now got all these wonderful regenerative treatments. We can all use incredible products like polynucleotides, Profiler, things like that to get great skin. But again, going back to that cake analogy again, you've got the structure of the cake, you've got the icing on the cake. So absolutely, these regenerative treatments are brilliant. And actually, everybody could, I don't like using the word should, have these treatments and really, really benefit from them because essentially all they're doing is taking your skin to the gym. They're just enhancing what you've got. They're just giving your own skin a bit of a kick up the bum and saying, here's some really good nutrients to help you do, some good stuff. So that's all great. But nothing does what filler does. Nothing fills. Well, actually, that's a lie. You can have fat grafts. You can have, the surgical options, of course, which is, again, why it's important to talk through different options because, again, filler can only do so much is the other side of it. You end up overfilling if you just keep trying to smooth and smooth and smooth. If you've got a 70-year-old lady who doesn't like her jowls. Well, okay, are we aiming for a completely straight jawline at 70? Is that age appropriate? Is that going to look natural? Probably not. And it will take mils and mils and mils to try and make this whole part of the face look smooth and contoured as a 30-year-old might look. So, again, just being age appropriate there. So I don't think fillers are over. I do think people are opting for less, but then part of that is also, I think, the skill of the injectors is very different now to how it used to be. Often we as injectors were taught almost protocols of like what to do for people. So you put 0.2 here, you put 0.3 here, you put this is how we do the 8-point facelift. This is how we do the Whereas we are a lot more sort of prescriptive for an individual now. We understand our anatomy much better. We understand the aging process much better. We understand the layers of where we're injecting much better. For example, placing filler more superficially can often give you a bigger result than placing it deep down because it's nearer to the surface. So you kind of get more for your money that way. So you often might use less volume of filler. We're more understanding of how the face moves as well. So it's not just about sticking a lump of filler in place to volumize. There's so much more to it. So we're being more artful with it as well. I think it's not going away. And I think if you actually just educate your patients properly and talk to them about it, and again, this isn't to try and persuade them because clearly they need it or anything like that. I always say, what are you scared about specifically? And we'll talk that through. And I think what's happening is the more fear that they're in your patient coming to see you means that you as the practitioner also have a huge it raises your fear because, oh God, well, what if it does go wrong? And it's starting to affect a lot of people's confidence, particularly if you're newer to it. And there's certain areas like, for example, tear troughs. I imagine if we looked at the statistics for the amount of tear trough filler being done recently has gone down significantly, particularly because of polynucleotides now, great. Polynucleotides can do a lot for the tear trough. And they absolutely, where some people, maybe the only option you had would have been some tear trough filler, you might be able to get enough of an improvement with that, but it still doesn't volumize. It still doesn't do what a filler would do in that area. So again, I think it comes down to education and it comes down to trust as well. But you've got to think, to actually get the results in a patient that they want and the most harmonious result, filler does give that and it can give that. So it's having an understanding of all of it together and having that sort of multi-treatment approach.
Yeah, Absolutely, rather than just relying on fillers alone. Like you say, techniques have
Yeah.
evolved a lot over the last couple of decades, and products probably as well. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. You know, products have come a long, long way. I'll talk about Revanest just because I know the range very well. So they've recently brought out Revise, which is a new tear trough product, a product specifically for the tear trough. So it has half of the amount of hyaluronic acid of any of the other fillers, and it kind of pre-hydrated. So basically, obviously, one of the concerns with the tear trough is when we inject filler into the tear trough, hyaluronic acid. So of course, it's going to, you know, attract water. So a risk or a potential complication is that it can end up swelling up later down the line, and then people come back with, you know, big slugs under their eyes or lumpy bits, and obviously that's not going to work. So you end up then dissolving it, and this is something that has put lots of people off doing tear trough filler and feeling, you know, unsure about it. So this product has been great because it has a significantly reduced swell factor to it. So, you know, you feel more secure when you're injecting, that they're less likely. I mean, still has the same other risks and complications, and it's not completely immune because it's still a filler, but it is much less likely to do that. So the technology for creating fillers for specific areas of the face to tackle specific problems that we have absolutely has come a long, long way.
amazing. Yeah. And as we kind of wrap up the episode, for any medical professionals listening who are considering leaving traditional healthcare to pursue aesthetics, what advice would you give them?
Oh, one. That is a big one. Oh, it's a really hard one. So I was working 3 days a week whilst building the clinic as a GP, which is full time, considered full time these days as a GP. It's extremely exhausting. And then I was doing like 4 days a week doing this. And then I slowly kind of chipped away and would drop a day and do this and what have you. But there comes a point where your clinic and your business cannot grow any further because you need the time to spend on the background things. It's not time in clinic anymore. It's actually you sitting at home planning, you know, looking at your marketing, looking at your, I don't know, even social media, all these other sides, getting to conferences. I was using all of my annual leave going to conferences or going abroad for brand related events and things like that. And so I just never got a break because my annual leave was used doing that. So you have to take the leave. Ultimately, you know, if you don't create space, it's not going to come to you. You know, you have to open up and create that void. And it is terrifying. My other half, Tom, was terrified. You know, it was like, oh God, you know, yeah, your income's going to drop if you quit that and you go into that. And I think it's great to have guidance from someone else. So like I said, if you've got a business coach or somebody like that to guide you so that you're not making a completely silly decision, but there just does come a point where perhaps you need to take the jump. It depends what you want. Look, some people want to continue with their NHS work or whatever their other work is, and then they have their clinic on the side, or they spread their time half and half, and maybe both they have the capacity to do that. Maybe their clinic they don't want or aspire to the same level of growth, and for me, like the portfolio career is not necessarily something they're looking to go for. So, you know, again, you don't necessarily need to do it that way. But I think the aesthetics community is a really, on the whole, really supportive, really, really positive one as well. And from medical backgrounds, we've all worked in the NHS pretty much. So we all know what it's like. I think there is a huge amount of guilt that you feel when you're leaving the NHS. Not so much that people overtly will tell you like, oh God, you know, you're so, you know, whatever. I felt that people just thought I just wanted to go and be rich and earn money and do something completely superficial that's non-medical. I mean, I'm now involved in research. I'm writing journal articles. Like I study research papers way more now than I used to in GB. Like I you know, my level of anatomy, like the depths that I have taken aesthetic medicine to, completely different to actually when I was in the NHS. Like it is a medical specialty in itself, and you are helping people. You know, the thing for me, I got to a point with GP, and this is a reflection of the state of the NHS. I don't need to explain it. We all know what it's like to work in the NHS at the moment. You know, it's good people being worked hard, And most of these people are good doctors, good nurses that really want to help. That's why they went into the profession. That's what they want to do. But the system doesn't necessarily give you the capacity to be able to do that. And I was coming home each day feeling like I didn't help that person the way I wanted to because I didn't have time. I had to push them on, or I had to say, well, try this and then I'll book you in next week. Or, where ideally I wanted to sit with them a bit longer. I wanted to delve into it a little bit more. I wanted to help them do that X, Y, Z. So I was coming home feeling like I wasn't helping. And then, of course, when you get people telling you like, NHS, like angry babies, whatever, it doesn't help. And it's so unfulfilling. And I think I just reached a point where I was like, this isn't on me. It's not on me. I like to help people. And I was feeling so fulfilled by being able to empower women and help women through my aesthetics work. And I just love it that I was like, I'm going to choose to do what's best for me here. So that was what I decided.
Yeah, you can see why people do it. Yeah, because ultimately, like you say, you're a doctor, you want to help people, but if you're not given that opportunity to do
Yeah,
it
it just
in the
felt like,
way that, you want to do in the NHS, at least now you can decide how much time you're spending with your patients and you can navigate your own kind of pathways for care, which I think is really, really important. Oh, Alison, this is so inspirational. Like, I
oh,
just loved our
we'll have
chat
to
so
do
much.
it
I could
again.
honestly sit here and talk to you all day, but I am conscious that people might not want to listen to a 3-hour podcast episode.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Uh,
we'll cut it here.
yeah, but thank you so much for coming on and sharing your very inspirational story and everything behind the scenes of your business, how you've grown your business where it is today. It's been so lovely speaking to you, so thank you so much again.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really, really enjoyed it as well.
Thank you.